Not for the first time in that, like, all of a sudden I believe in Keon's talent or believe in anything. It's for the first time, like, I've tried to give true thought to what I think Keon Ellis could be for this basketball team. And I think Jesse posed the question to, like, is Keon a building block for this team?
Mhm.
And I think he can be. I think he is. I think he should be. And I think when Scott Perry talks about what he wants in players that wear this uniform, I think he's describing to a certain degree Keon Ellis.
Mhm.
And again, it doesn't have to be your main guy. And I know you and Hammer and Kyle and Jesse had some conversations while I was away, but I don't know where you guys landed on this, but I think Keon should absolutely be a part of the Sacramento Kings future moving forward.
I do too.
And this is from two people who have said you can get rid of anyone on this team.
Mhm.
Literally anyone.
I do too. I want to be perfectly clear when I say that. I think Keon Ellis, much like you said, is the type of player this franchise needs. He's in the mold of the head coach and how he
Mhm.
likes the game to be played and people to compete. He's in the mold of the way I like to see players out there competing and playing. I want Keon Ellis here. And I think he is somebody that you can help build around. But the conversation kind of came up because we were talking about, I think the insiders were talking, well, Jesse was talking about, like, hey, you may be staring at telling Keon he can't start for 2 years. He's going to be making minimum money. Would he even want to be here because of that? Because he's stuck on the bench behind a Zack LaVine because of a bad contract or whatever. And I said, that's when I'd have that conversation with Keon. It wouldn't be contentious or nothing, but it would be in the vein of what we've talked about. I want willing participants, not hostages, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And if I'm Scott Perry, I'm talking to him and I'm saying, hey, this is the reality of what's going on. We want you here. We want you a part of this, but you got to let me know right now if this is something you're not interested in, and we'll look to accommodate you.
Mm-hmm.
And then James and I think everybody was kind of like, well, no, the answer is to bench Zach LaVine and start Keon Ellis. And I said,
I don't agree with that.
I don't see it
I
that
don't
way.
agree with that.
And then, and this is the scenario I was talking about. I said, well, what do you think if you traded Keon Ellis, which I'm not trying to, but if he don't want to be here, that was the crux of what I was saying. Anybody that doesn't want to be here, let's look to move
Can
him.
go. Mm-hmm.
Like that, I understand why you might not want to be here. You got your reasons. Cool. We're trying to build something where we want people who are invested in trying to make this happen.
Mm-hmm.
Let's try and accommodate you. And I said, well, what do you think you could get for Keon Ellis? And James was like, probably a first round pick.
Mm-hmm.
And I said,
Mm-hmm.
no disrespect. But if you're true, I don't agree with that. But if you are accurate in that, and Keon is saying he don't want to go or it doesn't want to be here, yeah, like that's the deal I'm making. I get a first round pick because then I laid out the scenario where you guys already don't think the Kings are going to be any good. So you don't think they're any good. You get a first round pick from them just being bad. You can move on from Keon Ellis on a bad team and get an extra first round pick that helps you in your rebuild and what you're trying to do asset wise and roster building wise.
Mm-hmm.
Once again, I don't want to see him go, but how are you in a position not to do that? No disrespect for a guy like Keon Ellis, who, as much of a building block as he is, as much as I love him, I think you can find those type of players
Mm-hmm.
for a good deal and cheap and all this other stuff in the draft. Keon himself was undrafted.
Mm-hmm.
If you got guys that know what they're doing, you can find guys like that. Like you're able to add an asset, a first round asset in that situation. Yeah, I'm 100% open to that. And that's kind of where the conversation was.
Yeah, I think Hammers a first round pick seems like a reach for Keon.
You would think it would be like a good team. So like would the Nuggets give you a first rounder for Keon? I could see a world,
if
maybe. I don't
yeah, I
know.
mean, I guess if there's a good basketball team with
Why,
multiple first round picks,
why would they give you a first though if he doesn't even have a contract extension right now?
the understanding that he's going to sign a contract with
Oh, I
you.
guess, but
Yeah. I
yeah,
mean,
I see it.
it's that.
I figure you just let him go to free agency.
I also don't think that the Kings I also don't think that Keon's future with the Kings is cooked because the extension didn't work out this offseason. I think there are plenty more ways for things to work out for Sacramento and Keon. And I have to believe, from the little I know of Scott Perry and the way that he moves, if Keon Ellis is a part of Sacramento's future, he knows that already.
I agree.
And I, again, could absolutely be wrong. I don't think I am. I think Keon Ellis will be a King, and I think that that's been discussed. Hey, we're trying to make a few moves financially that will put us in a better long-term position with you on this team. I know that's not comforting because it means you can't get your money right now. You're going to get your money. You're going to get it from us. We do not want you to go anywhere. This is a very simple timing transaction. If we sign you in 6 months versus signing you right now, that gives us more flexibility. Again, I could be wrong, but I don't feel like Scott Perry moves in an underhanded way. I don't feel like Scott Perry moves in a vindictive way. And I don't feel like, if you're talking about hostages versus volunteers, I don't feel like Scott Perry is going to start off his time as the general manager of the Sacramento Kings in a way that creates divisiveness with a player who could potentially be really important for them moving forward.
I agree. And I agree with also what you said about, I think they've already had the conversation and they are already on the same page. That doesn't mean Keon is like thrilled with the situation that he's in, but I also don't think he like wants out. Like, I think he's open at the very least to working with the Kings, working with Scott Perry, and trying to be part of what they're trying to do. Brian in the chatty house says trying to find a guy when you already have one is a wild, though. Quit with door number 3, take the prize you got. Tyler, he says to try and draft a player like Keon. He's already in the building, shoots 40% from 3 and plays defense. I don't mean to be dismissive or disrespectful to Keon. You guys, I'll explain it again just because I value him that much, but you guys know how I feel about Keon. I love that dude. I want him here. You can go on any roster in the NBA and find a player like that. You can. That doesn't mean it's not valuable. That doesn't mean anything. I
think Kings fans would argue there isn't one here. There hasn't been one here.
Then but you can go find that guy. Like Haywood Highsmith, he doesn't shoot at the same level as Keon Ellis, but he's the type of guy you're talking about. He shoots 38% from 3. This is a defender, 3-and-D guy, can guard multiple positions at, what is he, 6'5".
Mm-hmm.
I just randomly went to different rosters. Abaji on the Raptors. That's another guy that you can just find. Lou Dort and Caruso were undrafted guys. Like, they're not like, you have to find the right guy and find it. Keon Ellis was undrafted. The Kings found this. You can find those type of guys all over the place. And what I'm saying is, if you're getting assets in return that can help with your roster building and help with you trying to rebuild and remold this roster, I wouldn't have, there's damn near nobody on the roster that I would let get in the way of that.
Mm-hmm.
And Keon Ellis is included in that. Like, I wouldn't not get assets and try what I needed to do to help build this roster because I didn't want Keon Ellis to go. Mm-hmm. If he wanted to go.
Mm-hmm.
If he wants to say, we're not even having this conversation. Like, if he's saying that he's committed, which I think we both agree, he's here, he's locked in, he's with Scott Perry, and the Kings want him. I don't want to say I'm not listening to no trade offers, but I'm not listening. I don't have any interest. Even if the Nuggets do call, it's like, hey, we'll give you. Nah, he wants to be here. He's part of what we're doing. So that's the caveat in looking to move on from him, was if he didn't want to be here.
And there's, at least right now, no indication that that's reality, mm-hmm. right? That is a hypothetical scenario. And I think when you break down the different things that Keon Ellis potentially does, for me, it's one of the main reasons, if the reason there shouldn't be a conversation about Keon in place of Zack LaVine in the starting lineup is I believe he can be a greater volume shooter. I mean, he shot I think he went up from 4 times the year prior to, I believe it was just shy of 6 last year. That's terrific. That's not a starting 2-guard shooting numbers. Like he needs to be well into the double digits of shot attempts, and you can hype the 43% from 3. Okay, like as long as that volume is there, because there's been a lot of talk about Doug and 53s and Domas and De'Aaron, or excuse me, DeMar, and these different guys that don't shoot enough. Well, you can't make the argument that putting Keon Ellis in the starting lineup is going to fix that, especially if you're taking Zack LaVine out. So regardless of what his role is, whether they find some way to have him in the starting lineup next year or as a key cog coming off the bench, I think the volume of shots he takes has to go up, both if in the 2-point range and in the 3-point range. I think he should also be a lot more aggressive in getting to the basket, because I think he does that pretty effectively. And he can get to the foul line. You can't remove a 20-plus point per game scorer just because you don't like him from the starting lineup.
I agree.
That's I think there's this. I think there's this idea, and this is fresh in my mind, and I can say all of this because today's Wednesday. James will be with us in a couple hours. He'll be with us at 3:00, hour and a half, and I can bring this back to him. Like, James has a specific type of basketball player that he likes. It's not the Zack LaVine type, and if you were listening today, it's not the Cam Thomas type, and I don't know exactly what type of player Cam Thomas is, but I know what type of player Cam Thomas is on the Brooklyn Nets. And I don't know that that's necessarily the same thing. Because if Jordy Fernandez is out there telling me, like, look, man, you're going to have to cook. We don't have a lot of options for you. You're going to be our primary scorer. We can work some things, maybe try to move the ball around, maybe try to get to Claxton, maybe try to do these different things. That's all fine. But you're our primary scorer. That's the role that has been put upon him. And if he does that in a way that's effective for his numbers, clearly the game plan establishes this isn't the best basketball team. So to frame someone as if we know exactly who they are because of the way they play on a specific team, one, that we all acknowledge it's one of the 2 teams under the cap, they're not very good, then it's a bit unfair to go, yeah, Cam Thomas just isn't a good basketball player. It's not conducive to winning. I don't know that that's necessarily true. I just know that Cam Thomas plays a certain way on Brooklyn. Zack LaVine is an offensive player. And, oh, man, how many times he hasn't won championships? He hasn't won playoff series. He hasn't done that. Okay, it doesn't mean he's a bad basketball player. We've got to make up our mind on whether that Chicago team he was on was good or not, because I don't think people can decide. They just use whatever fits their argument. Zack LaVine's a good ball player. And there isn't a player good enough to take him out of the starting lineup for. Keon Ellis is absolutely good enough to play a really, really high level of basketball. Keon Ellis is good enough to be slotted as the either literal or figurative 6th man for the Sacramento Kings. And he's good enough to be in the conversation for that award at the end of the year. Of course, he can only win it if he starts the final 20 games of the season and is effective like Naz Reid did. Naz Reid, very good basketball player. But Keon should be an integral part of what Sacramento is doing moving forward this year and beyond.
Absolutely. And I'll say this, maybe I lean more towards play. Like if I was a coach, if I was Doug Christie, I lean more towards being a player's coach or protecting the players a little bit, because I would look at the guys that are on this roster, and if I've had conversations with them, if I've gone through training camp and, we're in a good space and they understand what I expect of them and what we're trying to establish as a group, I probably would, and rightfully so, not like, oh, I guess this is just what you have to do. Like, no, legitimately in real life, give LaVine, DeRozan, those guys the benefit of the doubt. Let's try it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to start with trying this out. We had a conversation. I told you what I was looking for out of you, what this team needed, what this roster needed. I'm not here to talk about your past. I'm here to talk about right here and right now. what I'm looking for and what I think makes us a better basketball team and help us win games. And you said in that conversation, you were all in. I'm going to give you a realistic shot to find out. I'm not going to say, well, the DVOA says, I think that's a football term, but the DVOA says I should be starting a better defensive lineup. So Zack LaVine, I don't care what you've accomplished in this league and what you've done in this league. I'm putting you to the bench and you just like it. I'm not going to do that. I think that's not how you treat or handle guys of that stature, at least right off the top. If we're going through the season and I've seen it and it's not working out the way that I hoped or that we hoped, and we're not the team that I hoped we could be, then we can revisit that conversation and I can see if I can make adjustments with the lineup that way. But to start everything off, I'm going to give those guys the benefit of the doubt to try and see if we can figure it out with them.